Okay, in this video I'm going to be going through the Unit 1 exam so that you can make corrections and follow along. You can also fast forward through this video. So if you understood numbers 1 and 2, don't bother watching them. Just move along to a problem that you do or that you did not get correct so that you can understand why you got it incorrect. For those of you that took this assessment at a later time, so you took the makeup assessment, the problem numbers that you're going to follow along with are written in green next to each of these questions. So number 1, this problem is actually question number 5 in your test booklet. So if you want to follow along, you're just going to turn to question number 5. Number 2 is question number 8. So taking a look at this first problem, which of the following statements about the relations below is true? Looking at this image, I'm going to take a guess that I'm determining which are functions and which are not. And if I look down at my answer choices, that's exactly what I'm figuring out, is eliminating which ones are functions and which ones are not functions. So if I look at figure 1, well, if I ask does each input have only one output? The answer to that is yes, there is an output that has more than one input, or an input that has 2 different outputs. So figure 1 is a function. If I look at figure 2, same thing. Each of my inputs just have one output. This is a function. Let's look at figure 3. So 2 has one output, -8 has one output. But if I go down to 1, well, 1 I can see has 2 different outputs. So that makes this not a function because the definition of a function is each input has only one output. So I know for sure that figure 3 is not a function. Figure 4, yep, it seems 1 to 1. This is also going to be a function. So now I know that figures 1, 2, and 4 are functions. Let's look down at our answer choices. All relations above are not functions. Well, that's not true because figures 1, 2, and 4 are functions. All relations above are functions. Well, that's also not true because figure 3 is not a function. Both figure 1 and 2 are functions. Figure 1 is a function. Figure 2 is a function. That's looking pretty good. Both figure 2 and figure 3 are a function. Figure 2 is a function. Figure 3, not a function, so I can eliminate that one. Both figure 3 and figure 4. Figure 3 and figure 4 are functions. Again, note figure 3 is not a function. So my correct answer choice is C. Figures 1 and 2 are functions. Let's look at question number 2. Which of the following relations is a function? So again, I want to go back to that definition. Each input has only one output. If you're doing the makeup test, you're going to look at your problem number 8. So I'm going to look at each of my inputs and make sure that they have only one output. So in part A, I've got 2.15, 2.151, and 2. So I want to ask myself, are these numbers equivalent? And the answer is no. So that means that no matter what the outputs are, I'm not going to have an input that has more than one output. So this is definitely a function. Let's look at part B. Pi, 3.14, and 1. None of these numbers are the same. Pi does not equal 3.14. Pi does not equal 3.14. Pi is about 3.14. Not the same thing. So again, none of these inputs are the same, which means that I don't really care what the outputs are. This is going to be a function. Let's look at part C, or answer choice C. Again, I'm going to circle my inputs, 7, 1.1, 1, and 7. Okay, I've got 2 inputs that are exactly the same. So I've got a 7 and a 7 over here. I want to make sure that their outputs are exactly the same. And when I look, 1 and 1, they are. This is also a function. So answer choice D, both B and C are functions. Well, that's true, but let's make sure that I'm not discounting part A. all are functions, and that is true. All three of these are function. E is correct. Okay, moving on to the next page. Okay, number 3. So if you were in the makeup exam, this is question number 1. Evaluate f of 2 for f of x equals 2x minus x times the square root of 2x squared minus 2x over x. So we're going to end up with a lot of 2's. F of 2, in this case I'm just replacing any of my x's with 2's, so this is equal to 2 times 2 minus 2 times the square root of 2 times 2 squared minus 2 times 2 all over 2. Okay, I've got to follow my order of operations with this problem, so I'm going to do what's in my square root first, because that's essentially the same thing as parentheses. So f of 2 equals 2 times 2 minus 2 times the square root of 2 times 4 minus 2 times 2 all over 2. This is the same thing as 2 times 2 minus 2 times the square root of 8 minus 4 all over 2. So this is the same thing. F of 2 is equal to 2 times 2 minus 2 times the square root of 4 over 2. And I'm going to pick it up over here. My square root of 4 is going to simplify down to 2, so this is the same thing. F of 2 equals 2 times 2 minus 2 times 2 over 2. So f of 2 equals 4 minus 4 over 2. F of 2 equals 0 over 2, which is just going to equal 0. So A is my correct answer choice. Let's look at number 4. This is question number 6 in the makeup exam. Again, I'm evaluating f of negative 2, this time for a slightly different function. So wherever there's an x, I'm replacing it with a negative 2. So this is f of negative 2 equals 2 times negative 2 minus the square root of negative 2 to the 3rd power minus 12 times negative 2 all over negative 2 minus 5. Okay, so again, just like the last one, I'm going to simplify what's inside of my square root first. F of negative 2 equals 2 times negative 2 minus the square root. Negative 2 cubed is going to give me a negative 8 minus 12 times negative 2 over negative 2 minus 5. So this will be the same thing as f of negative 2 equals 2 times negative 2 minus the square root of negative 8 plus a negative times a negative is going to give me a positive 24 over negative 2 minus 5. F of negative 2 equals 2 times negative 2 minus the square root of 16 over negative 2 minus 5. F of negative 2 equals, I can simplify this, negative 2 times 2 is going to give me a negative 4, minus the square root of 16 is 4, over negative 2 minus 5. F of negative 2 equals, you're going to be tempted to cancel these 4's out, but actually they're the same sign. So I'm going to add, keep an add. So I've got a negative 8 over negative 2 minus 5, same thing, I'm going to add a negative 7. A negative divided by a negative, this will turn into a positive fraction. F of negative 2 equals 8 over 7. So A is your correct answer. Moving on to question number 5. This is number 3 in the makeup exam. What is f of negative 1 and f of 3? Well, f of negative 1, so this is giving me an x value, so x equals negative 1. I want to know what does y equal. With this one, x equals 3. Again, I want to know what does y equal at that point. So at negative 1, I've got a couple things going on. I've got an open circle up here, closed circle here, and another open circle here. You'll remember that I'm always going to gravitate towards the closed circle. I can ignore the open circles for this problem. So at negative 1, when x is equal to negative 1, my y value is also a negative 1. That was easy. Let's look at x equals 3. So if I go over 1, 2, 3, at 3 I've got an open circle up here and an open circle down here. I don't have any closed circles, which means that at x equals 3, y does not exist. I can't just pick one of those to use. So my solution should look like negative 1 and does not exist. Let's see which one matches. Here we go. D. Number 6. What is the best approximation for f of 0? Well, let's take a look. So at 0, here's my x value. I want to know my y value. So I want to know y equals what? Y equals what? So at 0, I'm going to count down. I've got negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. But my 0 is somewhere in between negative 4 and negative 5. In between negative 4 and negative 5. If I think about that on my number line, here's 0, here's negative 4, here's negative 5. This would be a negative 4.5 or some decimal after 4. So B is your correct answer. Okay. Number 7. So this is number 2 for the makeup pass. You start a rumor that your brother's friend's uncle is cheating on your best friend's girlfriend. If you start the rumor during first period and told 2 people. So in first period, I tell 2 people no. And 3 times as many people are told from period to period, on an anchor day. So I know I've got 6 periods. So second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Which expression below describes the amount of people that will be told the rumor in 6th period only? So I'm given kind of this nice little hint. 2 people are told in first, 6 people are told in second. So if it's tripling, 6 times 3 is going to give me 18. And then I'm going to keep multiplying by 3. So if I'm multiplying by 3, that tells me that I've got a geometric sequence. My notation for how to find a term, any term in my geometric sequence, is to take my first term times my r to the n minus 1. So in this case, I'm trying to find my 6th term. So u sub 6 equals, I know that my first term is 2, my r value is 3, and I'm doing this to the 6 minus 1. If I look over at my answer choices, none of these, so it's definitely not A, definitely not B, because I'm not taking the sum. I only want to know how many people know in 6th period. If I look at my answer choices, well, I can definitely eliminate answer choice D, because it's got the 3 and the 2 in the wrong order. And here I've got to the 6th power, here I've got to the 5th. No 6 minus 1, so I've got to simplify that. So u sub 6 is equal to 2 times 3. 6 minus 1 gives me 5. C is your correct answer. Last problem for this section. Which of the following is not true about this sequence? Let's go through it. So just looking at this, I know that it's a geometric sequence. So I want to know what is not true. It is a geometric sequence, so I'm crossing that out. When I have a geometric sequence, in this form, I can pull out a couple things. I know that my u sub 1 is 3. My ratio is 2. And so let's take a look. The first term is 3. Well, I know that is true, so I can cross it off. It says here the difference is 2. I kind of don't think that that's true because I know that the ratio is true and a geometric sequence doesn't have a difference. So I'm going to leave that, but kind of put a little squiggle next to it to come back to it. The sequence is in the explicit form. I've got an n minus 1 here in my exponent, so yeah, it is. I'm going to cross that one off. The third term is 12. Let's double check that. So if I want to find r sub 3, I'm going to take 3 times 2 to the 3 minus 1. That's the same thing as 3 times 2 squared, or 3 times 4, which equals 12. Yeah, my third term is 12, so my incorrect answer must be B. That is not true about this sequence. Moving into section 2 of your test, I want to evaluate the following summation. So if you're in the makeup test, this is question 11. I've got the sum from the first term to the fifth term of this sequence, which is geometric, and it's in the explicit form. I know that because I've got a term, then another term to the exponent, something minus 1. So in this problem, I can take a couple pieces of information. I know that u sub 1 is 5. I know that my ratio is 1/2, and I know that k is 5. That's all the information I need to find a geometric sum, which I know the formula for that is u sub 1 times 1 minus r to the k over 1 minus r. So I'm going to substitute in what I know. My sum is equal to 5 times 1 minus 1/2 to the 5th power over 1 minus 1/2. When I grab my calculator to plug that in, oh, that's a little harsh, I'll have 5 parentheses parentheses 1 minus, I can change 1/2 into a decimal if I'd like, 0.5 to the 5th, close parentheses on my numerator, divided by, open parentheses, 1 minus 0.5, close parentheses, hit enter. I'll get that my sum is equal to 9.6875, which if I look at my answer choices right now, none of those match. But some of them are a fraction, so I want to see if I can convert this to a fraction. So I'm going to go math to fraction, hit enter, enter again, and I'll get 155 over 16, which does not match up with any of these choices. So my correct answer is E. None of the above are correct. Next one, number 10, so this is number 15 in the makeup exam. I want to evaluate the following summation, so I'm taking the sum from the first term to the 50th term of this sequence, which I can recognize is arithmetic, and it is in the explicit form. So from here, I know a couple pieces of information. I know that u sub 1 is equal to 4. I know that the difference is a negative 3. And I know that k is equal to 50. If you wanted, you could find u sub k by plugging in 50 for n. But I actually don't need to do that because I've got a formula that I can use to find the sum without knowing u sub k. So I can take the sum with k, so 50 times 4, my u sub 1, plus 50 times 50 minus 1 times the difference, all over 2. I'm going to put this in parentheses so that I know I'm not subtracting. And then I'm going to type that all into my calculator. So 50 times 4 plus, in my numerator, 50 times 50 minus 1 I know is 49. Oops, 49. Times a negative 3, and I'm taking that whole numerator and dividing it by 2. In that case, I'll get the sum is equal to negative 3,475, which matches up with answer choice A. Let's keep moving on. Number 11, which is number 9 in the makeup exam. What is the sum, so I'm finding the sum, of the arithmetic sequence defined by 14, 21, 28, 35, all the way up to 700. And I'm told that this is a sequence of all multiples of 7 starting at 14. So I know a couple of things. I know that u sub 1 is equal to 14. I know that the difference, so to get from term to term, is 7. I'm adding 7. I also know that my u sub k, or my last term, is 700. In order to find any sum, I need to know what k equals. So before I can even take the sum, I need to solve for k. In order to do that, I'm going to set up my explicit form of the equation. So u sub n equals 14 plus n minus 1 times 7. If I'm finding u sub k, equals 14 plus k minus 1 times 7. I can substitute in 700 for k. So I get 700 equals 14 plus k minus 1 times 7. And now I'm simply just solving for k, so I can subtract 14. 700 minus 14, I'll end up at 686 equals k minus 1 times 7. I can divide both sides by 7. So 686 divided by 7 is going to give me 98 equals k minus 1. To solve for k, I can add 1 to both sides. I'll end up with k equals 99. So now that I've got all of that information, I can find the partial sum. So I'm going to take k over 2. The sum is equal to k divided by 2 times u sub 1 plus u sub k. So I'm going to take 99 over 2 and multiply that with 14 plus 700. When I plug that into my calculator, 99 divided by 2 times 14 plus 700, I'll end up at 35,343. 35,343. When I look up at my answer choices, that's going to end up being C. Number 12. This is number 12 in the makeup exam. Tom is selling lemonade. He charges $2 for the first cup. So I know that that is my use of 1. And 50 cents for every refill thereafter. So if I'm taking my sum after, or if I'm trying to figure out how much the 5th cup is going to cost, I'm going to take $2.50 or $2, and I'm going to keep adding 50 cents to it. So 50 cents is my difference. If I want to write the explicit formula that describes the total amount of money that I would have spent for the nth cup, just some random cup, not the total amount of money in general, I'm going to take u sub n. Since it's a difference, I know it's going to be an arithmetic sequence, equals my first term, so $2, plus n minus 1 times 50 cents. If I compare my answer with the ones that are here, it doesn't exactly match up. None of these have an n minus 1. So to get rid of my n minus 1, I've actually got to factor in this 50 cents. So I'll end up at u sub n equals $2 plus 0.5n minus 0.5. I can combine my $2 and my minus 0.5 so that I've got u sub n equals 1.5 plus 0.5n. And when I look at my answer choices now, these two things are equivalent. I've got an answer that makes sense. B is going to end up being correct. Number 13. You notice that the amount of reading in your government class is increasing by 2 pages of extra reading per night. 2 pages. And it's increasing by 2 pages. It's not doubled every time. I'm just adding 2 pages. So that's going to be my difference. Assuming that you started reading 2 pages per night. So you started reading. 2 pages is going to be my use of 1. And I know that my difference is also 2. Which of the following summations would represent the total amount of pages read per month? And I'm going to say that assume a month has 30 days. So I'm taking the sum from n equals 1 to 30. And now I've got to come up with my sequence. So I know the explicit form of this would be 2 plus n minus 1 times 2. Right now, none of these match up, so again, I've got to manipulate that equation. I'm going to multiply in my 2, or distribute it in. So u sub n equals 2 plus 2n minus 2. My 2's are going to cancel out. U sub n equals 2n. So my sequence is just 2n. C is correct. number 14, so this is number 13 in the makeup exam. The U.S. experienced a horrible economic downturn starting in the fall of 2008. As a result, the company you are currently working for issued a flat pay cut, or a decrease, of 4.5% across the board for all employees. Assuming that 2008 is the first year at the job, and the pay cut is not issued, which of the following expressions below would represent the amount of money you would be making this year? So this year it's 2015. If you made $40,000 the year the pay cut started. So my U sub 1 is $40,000. I'm getting a 4.5% decrease. When I've got 4.5% or a percentage increase or decrease, that's going to be my rate. But my rate is not just going to be 4.5. It's also not just going to be 0.045. Instead, I'm taking 100% of my previous year's salary, and I'm subtracting my 4.5%. So I'm subtracting 0.045. When I do that to get my rate, 1 minus 0.045, I'll end up with a rate equaling 0.955. So now I've got my U sub 1, I've got my rate. My explicit formula, U sub n is equal to 40,000 times 0.955 to the n minus 1. If it's 2015 now, if I think about how many years have passed since 2008, I know that it's been 7 years. So I'm finding how much money I'm making in the 7th year. So U sub n equals 40,000 times 0.955 to the 7 minus 1. And it looks like I've got to simplify that down to a 6. So the one that has a 6 and a 0.955 as my rate, I can cross out pretty much all of these. This one has a 7. D is going to be my correct answer. Last one for multiple choice, I'm taking the sum of this sequence from the first term to the 100th term. This is going to be an arithmetic sequence because I don't have any exponents. So it's not exponentially growing like a geometric sequence would. However, I don't know that much about it. I don't know what the difference is. I don't know what my first term is. All I really know is that k equals 100. So to solve this, I need to find what U sub 1 is and what U sub k is. And I'm going to plug those values in. To find U sub 1, I'm going to replace my variable in my equation with 1. So I'll have negative 4 times 1 minus 1. This will be negative 4 minus 1. U sub 1 will equal negative 5. With my kth term, my k equals 100, so I'm finding U sub 100. Again, I'm just going to replace whatever my variable is over here with 100. So I'll have negative 4 times 100 minus 1. U sub 100 will be negative 400 minus 1, or negative 401. From here, if I'm taking the partial sum, I'm going to take k over 2 times U sub 1 plus U sub k. I've got enough information to use that formula. So I'm going to take 100 divided by 2 times negative 5 plus a negative 401. When I plug that into my calculator, 100 divided by 2 times negative 5 plus a negative 401, I'll end up at negative 20,300. And when I go check my answers, that is answer choice E. That's the end of the multiple choice section. You'll go to the next video in order to check your free response.